Shalom, family. This is Sade coming to you with some more history of Black Jews in Northeast Africa and also West Africa. Now, I did a video a couple of weeks back about the West African Jews, like the Angola, Angola. It was Dahomey, Gambia, Benin, and so forth. So I did a video on that, and I also indicated and showed you how they were located in this map here. And I read also out of the book that I'm going to be reading out today called Travel in North Africa by Nahum Slouch, and then also a book by Alan Godby, The Lost Tribe of Myth. So I just wanted to show you here. I talked about it, and plus on the Sierra Leone, Senegambia, talking about the Jewish traces there, Dahomey, Gold Coast, Slave Coast, Ivory Coast. Here, Ivory Coast, Gold Coast, Slave Coast, Dahomey Jews, Yehudyms, Shantai, Jewish traces here, Benin, Ephraim, and the Levi city, and so forth. And this is all in West Africa here, because here you have Nigeria here, and we know that this is West Africa. Up here you have Lam Jewish colony, Ghana, or Ghanata in Ghana. So today I'm going to be talking about the Tunis, Morocco, Algeria, Mauritania, Moorish, Berber, and they say Negro Jews, but they always Negroes, or Yehudyms. Anyway, I'm not going to get into that about the different, just keep separating our people by names and titles and stuff. So anyway, so I'm going to start reading the book called Travel in North Africa, and then I'm also going to read from a book, The Lost Tribe of Myth, talking about the exact same colonies. And also I'm going to be reading another book that also verifies the same information. They're all three books talking about the exact same people in the exact same area. So I'm going to start with the persistence of Yehudim tradition in travel in North Africa. This is a gentleman that did a travel in Africa, about 10 years of result of study and research. He documented it very, very well. He even going to say that in the conclusion that he has the facts set forth in his book has led me as the present state of the known city of Africa will be treated in a volume devoted to the history of the Jewish civilization in Africa. So anyway, I spoke on this particular book about 2 weeks, I think about 2 weeks ago. So you can go back and look at that. And I read the forward, everything that he had written in his introduction. Well, not everything, but part of it. So today I'm coming from chapter 5 from Traveling in North Africa. And the title is The Persistence of Yahudym or Jewish Tradition. It says, we have seen that in all probability there were in Carthage and its dependents large numbers of Jews or Yehudyms who followed the Phoenicians into Africa. And this local tradition is in agreement with certain historical indication, while the manners and custom of the Jews of Tunis, and they're located up here. The Jews of Tunis. This is in West and Northeast Africa. So Tunis is right here. Tunis, and you see Jews, Tunis Jews, and then you have Tunisia, which is to Tunis. It says, while the manner and custom of the Jews of Tunis, which is in this area, the Tunis Jews in Africa, still give evidence of their ancient origin, there's not the slightest doubt that the Yehudyms had persisted in these parts from the Roman epoch to our own time. Certain Yehudym text passage in the Rome and Christian author And finally, the numerous inscriptions found in Africa all points to the importance of the role played by the Yahudims or Jewish elements in Africa before the Arabs' invasion. Now, he talks about that they were there before the Arab of Muslim invasion. Now, I'm going to read from the book, The Lost Tribe of Myth. He says the exact same thing about the Morocco Jews, the Tunis Jews, the Algeria Jews, and the Tripoli, which his name is Alan Godby, and they're documenting the exact same information that comes out of another German book, which I'm reading from. The first one is Travel in North Africa by Nahum Slouch. So this is what Alan Dogby said. In chapter 10 of his book, it says, Berber, Moorish, and Negro Jews. It says, to deal with the spread of ancient Yahism, meaning worship of Yah, and later Judaism in North Africa in terms of the modern Barbary states is a method historically impossible. So in other words, impossible to complete the it's not unclear, kind of like unclear, and that they really can't resolve it. At that time, he wasn't able to resolve, I guess, the difference, ethnic distinction between them. But he did says the terms of Morocco, Algeria, Tunis, Tripoli correspond to no ancient political, ethnical, or religious distinction. They are convenient for or yearbook convenient for a yearbook statement concerning present-day Judaism. But we have to begin with a time nearly 2,000 years before these Muslim states or provinces were politically defined. So even he's saying the same thing, that they existed before Muslim took over. So I want to put that out. So going back to the travel in North Africa, it goes on to say, it goes on to say, it says this question has been studied elsewhere. Slouch says, Hebrew, Phoenicians, Judeo, Berbers, Justers, Les, Juf, Eth, Empire of Rome. I guess he's naming this area back in ancient, during that time. It says, here we will merely mention that in the 6th century, the Jews are known with certainty to have inhabited the following places. The proconsulate province of Carthage, or consulate, or province of Carthage. Evidence are Hebrew inscriptions, the carvings of the Chaldalabum, and other objects of Mosaic cult, the necropolis and garment. And it goes on to name some more stuff. Name some other provinces that they found their Jewish traces or Yahudym traces. Then it goes on to say about the Mauritanians. It says, in Mauritania, Western Algeria, and Morocco, and Sefti, and Tespisa, and then Alpasio, Selassie. It says these colonies might well have been populated by the descendant of the Yahudims who came with the Phoenicians, but there was also large numbers of Yahudims or Jews who came from Palestine with the Romans. An ancient tradition which tells of 30,000 Yahudims settled throughout the province of Carthage by Titus is collaborated by another tradition attributed to Josephus, which speaks of the 12 boatloads of Yahudims or Jews landed by Titus in Tunis and Mauritania. Here's Tunis again, saying there was African Jews that settled during the time of Titus in this area here. Also says about Josephus speaks of the 12 loaves of Yahudim landed by Titus in Tortus, and also in Mauritania right here. Black Yahudims or Jews colonies settled during the time of Titus. Now I'm going to also read, going back to the next book, which is The Lost Tribe of Myth. Alan Godley says the same thing about the Mauritanian. It says Africa, the Roman called Numidia, while Mauritania roughly approximately the modern Morocco's. While Mauritania roughly approximates the modern Morocco, it would be noted that 1,000 years since Solomon time. Now, since Solomon time, here is Solomon time right here. Solomon times, you have the Tunis Jews, you had the what else? You had the Negro Jews I seen here too. The Berber Jews talks about. It talks about the Algeria here. The Algeria Yahudyms are Jews. The Black Jews. And then again the Algeria Jews, the Tunis Jews. These are all Jews in Northeast Africa. And during Solomon time, it says that during Solomon time, where did I say? I'm sorry. Yeah, it says while Mauritania roughly approximated the modern Morocco, it will be noticed that 1,000 years since Solomon time had not altered the nomad mode of life. So they hadn't even changed. They said it's still the same, practicing the same tradition. And as for the settled population, it was active, hardy, and very much mixed. So they mixed. Well, of course, they always mixed when they was going to these other nations and mixing with the other nations, of course. As a Roman political organization and conflicts are his theme. It says, one is the assumption that the Hebrews was the language of the Armenians. Now I'm going to read you about who the Armenian was in this third book. One is the assumption that Hebrew was the language of the Armenian Israelite patriarch, and that all culture expressed in the Hebrew language is to be credited to the Israelites. The other one result of pretension to have always been a secluded, historically aloof of people. It's a continued discounting of the Old Testament indication of early Israelite commercial travel and a general disregard of the notices of Israelite colonies and garrison placed in Africa as early as the 7th century. Here's the garrison right here. The tradition of Jewish garrison in Africa. I'm going to read that again. It says, One is the assumption that Hebrew was the language of the Armenian Israelite patriarchs, and that all the culture expressed in the Hebrew language is to be credited to the Israelite. It says, the other one result of pretension to have always been a segregate, secluded, historically aloof of people, is a continuing discounting of Old Testament indication of early Israelite commercial travel and a general disregard of the notice of Israelites in colonies and garrison placed in Africa as early as the 7th century. In contrast with these assumptions, we have always to remember what was pointed out in his chapter 4, that the language which we call Hebrew or Phoenician was spoken in Palestine and northward for 1,000 years or more before there were any Israel in Palestine. That the Armenians called Israel lost their Aramaic speech and were wholly absorbed by the Hebrew speakers. And that's out of the Lost Tribe of Myth. Do I want to go ahead and read this? No, that's not what. Do I want to read this? No. So anyways, the point I was trying to make is that the same Yahudym slash Jews in Africa is spoken of on this map. 3 books. The first book was The Travel of North Africa, and then also the book The Lost Tribe and Myth by Alan Godby. Now I'm going to take the third source. I wasn't going to make this long. I just want to kind of point out some stuff about this map, because this map, according to these books, there's so much information in this book regarding this map. It says the paternal lineage of black Moors can be linked partly to the Y, talking about the DNA. The black Moors can be linked partly to the Y DNA haplogroup R. This haplogroup is also seen in India, Sri Lanka, in the Native American, the Caribbean, and Africa. This RN haplogroup can be found in the Turgi people in Africa who live in Niger, Mali, Burkina Faso, Algeria, Algeria right here, or Algeria. They be changing up these names. And then the Moroccos, the Libyans, and the Libyans over here too. Here's Algeria right here. He said these people are people in these areas called Niger or Libya, Burkina Faso, Niger, and Mali have also been known to exhibit the Y-DNA E1B1A, which is the haplogroup for Jacob, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. It says the E1B1A Y-DNA haplogroup have been proven without a shadow of a doubt to be linked to the ancient Israelite of Negroid appearance in Africa. It says, so how can there be some Tar-Greek Libyans walking around with 2 different haplogroups? It goes on to say how they split. The E1B1A, R1B. This is because of the simple fact that there are some Israelites who mingle more with the sons of Ham opposed to mingling more with the sons of Shem, which makes sense. Get that split, E1B1A and then RIB. It says the Black Moors were known to be a group of Muslim composed of Israelite, North African, Egyptians, and Libyans. Same thing the other 2 books were saying. And Shemite races, Ishmaelite, Keturite, Joktanite, Elamites, Faxonite, Armenian, Assyrian, Edomite. It says the Assyrian, Ashur, Armenian, Aram, Babylon, Arphax, and so forth. So I just thought I would mention this book that talks about the Moroccos, because it also says that this can be as a perfect example in the people now living as a majority in Spain, Portugal, and Morocco, Eastern Europe, but who was the ancestor of these 2 haplogroup? It was a darker skinned race, Moors, and some of them, they just spread their seed, especially over there in Europe, and son of Shem living in the Indus Valley region. So anyway, I just read. The only reason I used this last third one is because just to point out the fact that all 3 books was talking about the Black Moors. All 3 books was talking about the Tunis, the Mauritanians, the Moroccos, the Libyans, and all up in this area, which is Northeast Africa, up in this area here. And these was Jews, black Jews living in these areas in Africa, Northeast Africa as well as West Africa as well. Sahara Desert is what they call the Tripolite. I haven't pronounced that right. It's called the Tripoli, Tripoli, or Tropoli. There was Sahara Desert Jews living in Sahara Desert, and he has a chapter on them as well in the book called Travel in North Africa. A whole chapter about the Sahara Desert Yahudims that was living in that area, and the long history of the tradition of the ancient Israelites culture. So I just thought I would I was just looking through the book, and I said, let me go ahead and share this, because like I said before, this map here, in the books that I have, is so much information about the Jews in Africa. I mean, it's just overwhelming. And I probably just need to next time I do something on this map along with the books, I'm gonna have to really sit down and outline the stuff when I present it the next time. But I just kind of like freestyling. I just thought I'd just come on right for a couple of minutes, just share that. Basically, just let you know that there was Africa, there were Jews in Africa during Solomon time, because that's what it says here. Solomon time. Also before the exile, called Pre-Exilic. Where did I see that at? Right down here. Pre-exilic, exile, or pre-exile, Yahudym. So there were Jews or Yahudyms in Africa, black African Jews, in this area before the exile or the exiles. So talks about that. It also talks again right about the Garrison Jews, the Libyan Jews, which is in both books I just read you. So they pretty much saying the same thing. So that tells me that their sources come from the same place, because they're writing about the same information. And they're two different guys, two different authors. One author is Traveling in North Africa by Nahum Slouch. The other one is Alan H. Godby. And then also this other book. I don't, if I say the name of this book, they're probably, you know how YouTube is, because they hate this guy right here. But he's saying the exact same thing about the books, about the two books that I have. So they all is saying the same thing, come up with the same conclusion, that there were African Jews practicing the culture thousands of years, for thousands of years, for at least 2,000 years, decades. It goes to look right here. It says the Septus 800 BC, Sidon, Israel, Northeast Africa. Talking about during the Alexander time here in Africa. Israel immigrant here 1100 to 700 BC. So everything adds up, y'all. And like I said before, I did a little video on West Africa, Dahomey, Nigeria, Cameroon, Benin, Ashanti, Liberia, Sierra Leone, Senegambia, Angola. That was West Africa. Here's Timbuktu here. And we know this is West Africa because on the coast, Ivory Coast, Gold Coast, Slave Coast. I hope I'm not going too fast on this. And then the Dahomey Jews, Jewish traces, Benin, Levite city, and so forth. So I just wanted to share these three sources that validate this map right here. So you can't deny it, that there are Jews still, are people still in Africa today that have been practicing the culture for decades, at least 1,000 more years, 1,000 plus years after the destruction of Jerusalem. Because we know it talks about Titus and talking about the Tunis during the time of Titus. Titus had was part of the destruction of the 70 AD. So anyways, I thought I would share that with you all. I hope you all learned something today, because I'm always learning from these books, these two books especially. And then now that I have this other person's book, I'm going to be comparing his as well. I may on the next video mention the third book, but it's from someone from our community that has written books. And I'm telling you, all across, all three books is saying the exact same thing, is agreeing with each other. So that tells me the book that he wrote basically just took the information from these two authors. Pretty much, it probably used some of the sources, Here's the Morocco. That's what I was looking for. I finally found Morocco. Okay, let's talk about the Morocco Jews. Wow. The great Atlas, Morocco right here. Talks about Morocco, the Algeria right here, and then the Tunis right here, the Tunis Jews, the Algeria Jews, the Morocco Jews. And then in his book, he tells, in his book, The Third Source, talks about the DNA and how it's spreaded and so forth and so on. So I'm going to look into these books some more, and I'm going to come up with another study, but this time I'm going to try to have it laid out. And I'm trying to get, right now, like I have Chromebook. I just purchased a Chromebook. I just purchased another monitor. So I'm trying to, I'm just learning this stuff, y'all. So bear with me. If you have any suggestions, please leave them in the comment. I would appreciate it. But yeah, I'm just learning, and I'm just trying to pass on what I'm learning. So I hope you all pick up something out of this. I'm not a professional, but like I said, I'm trying to put this information out there so we can see that we are the people. So anyway, in saying that, I say shalom and have a blessed evening.